Hello my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney. In today's video we will be chatting about my August wrap up. So hey, what's up? How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. Today's video will probably be pretty short and sweet. Since last month we moved into our new house, I really wasn't able to read a whole bunch. So I really only have like 4 books to chat about with you. But before we do that, I want to thank today's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online book service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors while helping readers find books that they love. Every single month, the Book of the Month team vets hundreds of books and curates a list of 5 to 7 books which contain new and early release titles so that we could spend less time researching and more time reading. Book of the Month is risk-free. If you do not love any of the choices that month, you can skip at no extra cost and then pick up the next month right where you left off. And of course, as always, you can use my code BOOKWORM to get your first box for $9.99. Out of all of the amazing choices this month, I chose Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen since it is described of having some magical realism woven throughout the story, and it's one of my favorite tropes. Very excited to give this one a shot. And my other top choice is The Fortunes of Jaded Women by Carolyn Hoon. And the story deals a lot with family, and the little anecdote inside really just sold it for me. A multi-narrative novel brimming with levity and candor. It is about mourning, meddling, celebrating, and healing together as a family. It shows how Vietnamese women emerge victorious even if the world is against them. I'm super excited for both of these titles, and I hope that you are as well. If not, feel free to check out their other choices for the month, and don't forget to use my code BOOKWORM to save and get your first box for $9.99. Thank you so much to Book of the Month again for sponsoring this video. And now we can go on and chat about the 4 books that I did actually get to this past month. The first book I want to talk about that I read in August is Come Tumbling Down by Seanan McGuire. This is book 5 in the Wayward Children's series, and it was phenomenal. They always are. This one in particular was super exciting for me because my favorite book in the series so far has been Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is I think book 2. And in this story, we revisit some of the same characters that we followed in that second one. And it's almost like you followed that storyline a little bit. You wouldn't have to, again, read this series in order at all, but I would actually recommend reading the second one before you read this 5th one, just so that you can make connections a little bit easier and then you wouldn't be confused at all. But revisiting the moors, which is the location in which we are traveling to through these magical doors. And so far, it's just like my favorite world that we've been able to explore. It has vampires. It's very like gothic and atmospheric. And the children that we followed in the second book were just like the most exciting for me. I really loved them. And then getting to be with them again in this book alongside some other characters because of the situation at hand. It was super awesome. Seanan McGuire's writing is always phenomenal, and they're like bite-sized stories. They're so much fun. They're very quick, and it's always a joy. 5 stars. The next one I read is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This one, I had really good vibes going into it. I was really excited to get into this story. For whatever reason, maybe it was the cover, maybe, I think it was mostly the cover. It was giving me Starless Sea vibes. And Starless Sea, if you know me, I love that book so much. That is a 5-star forever. And in this story, we basically have our main character, Jack, who grew up on this island called Cadence, but he has traveled off the island to go like teach and learn at a university, but he has been called back to Cadence because there have been girls, or lasses as they say in this book, who have been going missing, and they believe that Jack is the only person that can help them find them. And our other main character is Adele, who is like the future leader of the clan that lives in Cadence, and they were like childhood enemies, and now they're having to put their feelings aside to work together to find these missing girls, lasses. Ultimately, I mean, the book is pretty thick. I think that it could have been a little bit shorter, and I will say that I heard the term, the nickname, Old Menace, like 700 too many times. I was listening to it on audio while I was painting my kitchen cabinets. How the narrators kept saying Old Menace, like, just wasn't great. It kept taking me out of the story because the first couple times I was like, okay, that's kind of cute, whatever. But it was like the only nickname that Adele had for Jack, and it was just overused. I think that it would have been better had they switched it up a little bit, and it's kind of silly that that is one of the things that I need to like make a point of in my review, but it really stood out to me. And it was really quite annoying to me. However, the storyline, I actually did really enjoy. Again, I think that there could have been some things omitted. I think that it could have been shorter, but the magic within the story It was great. I really had a good time with it. And for the most part, I mean, the characters were pretty well written. I think that some things could have been fleshed out or explained a little bit more within backstories, and there were things that were just kind of left unexplained, which is fine. That was the author's choice. It was just me as a reader wishing that we got to learn a little bit more about certain characters because I was really enjoying them. But all in all, I think I gave this like a 4 out of 5. The next one, however, super stoked about it. It was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I truly really loved this book. In it, we have our two main characters, Sam and Sadie, and they were childhood friends who grew up and kind of crossed paths when they were in New York. I believe it was New York. They were in the subway somewhere. I think it was New York. They crossed paths again and they rekindled their friendship. They started creating this video game called Ishigo together. It ended up taking off. They became like very rich, very famous, but they had to keep making video games and they loved the creative process together. They made it like a whole business. They made it their livelihood, you know? But moving on and creating different projects together wasn't always the easiest thing. There were fights, there were disagreements, things are messy. You know, they're new adults and they are learning how to be an adult. They're learning how to deal with this like fame and fortune that they have bestowed upon themselves. And the story itself spans like 30 years or something, so it really follows them throughout their whole life. And I really think that the book handled it perfectly. There was no part of the story in either character's life where it was dragging or I was just wishing that we would move on to the next part in the story. I was really eating it up the whole time. One of the major things that I loved about the writing was how Gabrielle Zevin wrote Sam and Sadie, how she wrote their relationship, because it wasn't always platonic, but it also was so special. And there's a part in the synopsis that I actually kind of just want to read really quick because it says, it's a dazzling and intricately imagined novel that examines the multifarious nature of identity, disability, failure, the redemptive possibilities in play, and above all, our need to connect, to be loved, and to love. Yes, it is a love story, but it's not one you've read before. I think that like talks about it perfectly. It's honestly a really special book, and they have a really great relationship, friendship. All of the different characters that are brought into this story are so purposeful, and I just loved it. I love that it was also about a video game. I'm like entering my gamer girl era again. If you've seen my last video, then you understand. But yeah, phenomenal. I will think very fondly of this book for forever, probably. The last one, I hate to leave on kind of like a sour note, but I'm really upset about it. The last book that I read was Disorientation by Elaine Sheshu. This is like my favorite cover of the year, damn near. Like it's pretty far up there. And I'm so upset with how I ended up feeling about this book. It's just disappointing because I had such high hopes for it, and I was judging a book by its cover. Obviously, I love it a lot. But ultimately, this book is about our main character, Ingrid, who is a PhD student, and she is trying to write her thesis, I believe, on an extremely famous poet's work, Zhao Wenshu. And in her studies, it's taken her like 4 years, and she still really doesn't have much to show for it except for like stomach pains and anxiety. But in her research, she finds a note that was left in the archives of one of the like folders of research topics that she has been looking through. She finds a note that someone left there, and it feels like it was left for her. And it basically, how the synopsis describes it is that note kind of flips her whole world on its head, and she starts looking at things differently. She starts basically having like a conscious awakening of like the world and politically, socially, everything that's going on. And that is all well and good. But I'm telling you that I was halfway through this book. I think I reached the 50% mark. And I remember going over to my phone, because again, I was listening to an audio, I was doing some sort of home renovation project. I remember going over to my phone and thinking, oh, this has to be over soon, right? Like it has to be close to being done. And it was 50% exactly. And I got so upset. I was like, there's no way that I have to sit through another 50% of this book. I was very bored, and I was so annoyed. It's a bittersweet thing with Ingrid because she really is super ignorant and just aggravating to be in her head and follow her around. Granted, by the end of the book, she does have her like conscious awakening, and she's like a totally different person at the end of the book than she was at the start of the book, which is phenomenal. We love that for her. But living through so many pages of it, it was almost insufferable because there were so many points. And this was my buddy read pick actually for my book club that month. And I was in the Discord just like talking about it to no end because there were just too many things that she was so ignorant about that I feel like it didn't really make sense. I don't think that it was like the time period that this book was written in. I think that there were some things that she didn't know or didn't understand that I think was just a bad move on the author's part of putting those things in. I think that she could have been made a little less ignorant and it would have went a long way for her character because she honestly was like, didn't know what the word triggered meant in terms of like a political or social issue. Like there was a point that word was used in a rally that she was attending and she literally made a mental note. She's like, oh, I have never heard that before. I'm gonna have to look that up later. And I was like, what do you mean? Like there are context clues in the sentence that it was used in too. I don't know, whatever. It was just stupid things like that like I kept getting hung up on. And again, by the end of the story, it was really great to see her growth. And this book did a pretty good job actually at talking about like abusive and controlling relationships and touching on the fetishization of Asian women. Again, some of these topics were touched on well. However, the story, it was too long and the pacing just was not great. It was not great for me personally. So I gave this book a 3, which I'm upset about, but honestly it could be worse, but also it could be a lot better. And those were all the books that I think that was all the books. I think those were the only ones that I like completed. If there are more, like my life is too scattered for me to really like know where they are, what they were, no idea. I updated my Goodreads this morning for the first time in I think like a month and a half. So we're doing our best. Another book that I've been reading for literally the last month is Malice by John Gwynne, and I have less than 2 hours left of the book. I'm finally almost done because this has been one that I could not just listen to on audio. I've had to sit down and read it so that I can make sure I'm following all the characters, knowing what's going on, and I haven't had a lot of time to actually sit down and read with all of the house and moving things. So we will be finishing this tonight, and it's for a secret vlog, so I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking about it anyways. So I believe that that's all that I have for you today. Again, don't forget to check out Book of the Month and use my code BOOKWORM to save and get your first box for $9.99. But that's all that I have for you today. So if you're still watching it, then leave the little like bit guy down below in the comments, the little like gamer bit guy. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I always appreciate your support. And of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.